Hi everyone, the book I'm reviewing today is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. This has been on my reading list for quite a while and it didn't disappoint. An amazing read. Phil really weaves the story in a beautiful manner with such vulnerability and transparency that he actually captivates you. I actually struggled to put this book down, and within 2 days I had it read. A very interesting read, a very inspirational read. Stranger still was living again with my parents and twin sisters, sleeping in my childhood bed. Late at night, I'd lie on my back, staring at my college textbooks, my high school trophies, and blue ribbons, thinking, this is me still. My resume said I was a learned, accomplished soldier, a 24-year-old man in full. So why, I wondered, why do I still feel like a kid? If I tended to dwell on the things I wasn't, the reason was simple. Those were the things I knew best. I'd have found it difficult to say what or who exactly I was or might become. Like all my friends, I wanted to be successful. Unlike my friends, I didn't know what that meant. Money? Maybe. Wife, kids, house? Sure, if I was lucky. These were the goals I was taught to aspire to, and part of me did aspire to them instinctively. But deep down, I was searching for something else, something more. I had an aching sense that our time is short, shorter than we ever know, short as a morning run, and I wanted mine to be meaningful and purposeful and creative and important, above all, different. I wanted to leave a mark on the world. I wanted to win. No, that's not right. I simply didn't want to lose. And then it happened. As my young heart began to thump, as my pink lungs expanded like the wings of a bird, as the trees turned to greenish blurs, I saw it all before me. Exactly what I wanted my life to be. Play. I asked myself, what if there was a way, without being an athlete, to feel what athletes feel, to play all the time instead of working, or else to enjoy work so much that it becomes essentially the same thing. The world was so overrun with war and pain and misery. The daily grind was so exhausting and often unjust. Maybe the only answer, I thought, was to find some prodigious, improbable dream that seemed worthy, that seemed fun, that seemed a good fit, and chase it with an athlete's single-minded dedication and purpose. Like it or not, life is a game. Whoever denies that truth, whoever simply refuses to play, gets left on the sidelines, and I didn't want that. More than anything, that was the one thing that I did not want. And I read that extract because I think it's a beautiful introduction into Phil's journey of finding what it is that he wanted to do with his life and what this meant. Possibly, the main reason for my father's respectability fixation was a fear of his inner chaos. I felt this viscerally because every now and then that chaos would burst forth. I love how he put that respectability fixation and the way he coined it, and that was as a result of a fear of his inner chaos. I think that's something so relatable and puts to term something that we may all experience at a certain point, but not sure how we define it. I thanked my father and fled the nook before he had a chance to change his mind. Only later did I realize with a spasm of guilt that my father's lack of travel was an ulterior reason, perhaps the main reason that I wanted to go. This trip, this crazy idea, would be one sure way of becoming someone other than him, someone less respectable. Or maybe not less respectable, maybe just less obsessed with respectability. And as his journey continues, he had an insight. But first, I'd need to change my whole approach. I was a linear thinker, and according to Zen, linear thinking is not but a delusion, one of the many that keeps us unhappy. Reality is non-linear, Zen says. No future, no past. All is now. And in this one insight, there's so much of wisdom to glean through. Driving back to Portland, I'd puzzle over my sudden success at selling. I'd been unable to sell encyclopedias, and I'd despised it to boot. I'd been slightly better at selling mutual funds, but I'd felt dead inside. So why was selling shoes so different? Because I realized it wasn't selling. I believed in running. I believed that if people got out and ran a few miles every day, the world would be a better place. And I believed these shoes were better to run in. People, sensing my belief, wanted some of that belief for themselves. Belief, I decided. Belief is irresistible. And this is a great question to ponder through. What do you believe in? I was happy, maybe as happy as I'd ever been. And happiness can be dangerous. It dulls the senses. Thus, I wasn't prepared for that dreadful letter. Another insight. I wondered if she really loved me or just saw me as a chance to rebel. And that's what I spoke about, Phil's vulnerability and transparency, and how generously he can even share something like this. And it brought about the question to myself, can we be as honest as this with ourselves? Equity. I reached the point where I refused to even say it aloud because it wasn't a real word. It was bureaucratic jargon, a euphemism for cold, hard cash, of which I had none. Purposefully, any dollar that wasn't nailed down, I was plowing directly back into the business. Was that so rash? To have cash balances sitting around doing nothing made no sense to me. Sure, it would have been the cautious, conservative, prudent thing, but the roadside was littered with cautious, conservative, prudent entrepreneurs. I wanted to keep my foot pressed hard on the gas pedal. Somehow, in meeting after meeting, I held my tongue. Everything my banker said, I ultimately accepted. Then I'd do exactly as I pleased. I'd place another order with Onitsuka, double the size of the previous order, and show up at the bank all wide-eyed innocence, asking for a letter of credit to cover it. My banker would always be shocked. You want how much? And I'd always pretend to be shocked that he was shocked. I thought you'd see the wisdom. I'd wheedle, grovel, negotiate, and eventually he'd approve my loan. After I'd sold out the shoes and repaid the borrowing in full, I'd do it all over again. Place a mega order with Onitsuka, double the size of the previous order, then go to the bank in my best suit, an angelic look on my face. Phil was an accountant, by the way, through his studies. Interesting. I look back now and wonder if I was truly being myself, or if I was emulating Powerman or my father, or both. Was I adopting their man of few words demeanor? Was I maybe modeling all the men I admired? At the time, I was reading everything I could get my hands on about generals, samurai, shoguns, along with biographies of three main heroes: Churchill, Kennedy, and Tolstoy. I had no love of violence, but I was fascinated by leadership, or lack thereof, under extreme conditions. War is the most extreme of conditions, but business has its warlike parallels. Someone somewhere once said that business is war without bullets, and I tended to agree. I wasn't that unique. Throughout history, men have looked to the warrior for a model of Hemingway's cardinal virtue, pressurized grace. Hemingway himself wrote most of A Movable Feast while gazing at a statue of Marshal Ney, Napoleon's favorite commander. One lesson I took from all my homeschooling about heroes was that they didn't say much. None was a blabbermouth. None micromanaged. Don't tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do and let them surprise you with their results. So I didn't answer Johnson and I didn't pester him. Having told him what to do, I hoped that he would surprise me. Maybe with silence. And he weaves his way through, and an extract from later on. He was waiting for me to bend, to up my offer, but for once in my life I had leverage, because I had nothing left to give. Take it or leave it is like a four of a kind, hard to beat. And I think this was really inspirational to me, because when we have nothing left to give, generally you give up and you just leave it at that. When he had nothing to give, he went to negotiate again, trusting himself with that belief that he spoke about. No friends, no exercise, no social life, and wholly content. My life was out of balance, sure, but I didn't care. In fact, I wanted even more imbalance, or a different kind of imbalance. I wanted to dedicate every minute of every day to Blue Ribbon. I'd never been a multitasker, and I didn't see any reason to start now. I wanted to be present always. I wanted to focus constantly on the one task that really mattered. If my life was to be all work and no play, I wanted my work to be play. I wanted to quit Price Waterhouse. Not that I hated it, it just wasn't me. But it wasn't possible. Blue Ribbon simply couldn't support me. Though the company was on track to double sales for a fifth straight year, it still couldn't justify a salary for its co-founder. So I decided to compromise, find a different day job, one that would pay my bills but require fewer hours, leaving me more time for my passion. The only job I could think of that fit this criterion was teaching. Lastly, the really difficult exit interview. I told my father. He too stared. Bad enough I was still jackassing around with shoes, he said, but now this? Teaching wasn't respectable. Teaching at Portland State was downright disrespectable. What am I going to tell my friends? He asked. And as he journeyed on further with his life, I felt like a married man caught in a tawdry love triangle. I was assuring my lover Nisho that it was only a matter of time before I divorced my spouse, Onitsuka. Meanwhile, I was encouraging Onitsuka to think of me as a loving and devoted husband. I do not like this way of doing business, I wrote Sumeragi, but I feel I was thrust upon us by a company with the worst possible intentions. We'll be together soon, darling. Just have patience. And this was at another point that was one of the lowest in the book, and everyone was giving up and I love how Phil turned this around. I looked down the table. Everyone was sinking, slumping forward. I looked at Johnson. He was staring at the papers before him, and there was something in his handsome face, some quality I'd never seen there before. Surrender. Like everyone else in the room, he was giving up. The nation's economy was in the tank. A recession was underway. Gas lines, political gridlock, rising unemployment, Nixon being Nixon, Vietnam. It seemed like the end times. Everyone in the room had already been worrying about how they were going to make the rent, pay the light bill. Now this. I cleared my throat. So, in other words, I said, I cleared my throat again, pushed aside my yellow legal pad. What I'm trying to say is, we've got them right where we want them. Johnson lifted his eyes. Everyone around the table lifted their eyes. They sat up straighter. This is the moment, I said. This is the moment we've been waiting for. Our moment. No more selling someone else's brand. No more working for someone else. Onitsuka has been holding us down for years. Their late deliveries, their mixed up orders, their refusal to hear and implement our design ideas. Who among us isn't sick of dealing with all that? It's time we faced facts. If we're going to succeed or fail, we should do so on our own terms, with our own ideas, with our own brand. We posted 2 million in sales last year, none of which had anything to do with Onitsuka. That number was a testament to our ingenuity and hard work. Let's not look at this as a crisis. Let's look at this as our liberation, our Independence Day. Yes, it's going to be rough, I won't lie to you. We're definitely going to war people, but we know the terrain. We know our way around Japan now. And that's one reason I feel in my heart this is a war we can win. And if we win it, when we win it, I see great things for us on the other side of victory. We are still alive, people. We are still alive. As I stopped speaking, I could see a wave of relief swirl around the table like a cool breeze. Everyone felt it. It was as real as the wind that used to swirl around the office next to the pink bucket. There were nods, murmurs, nervous chuckles. We spent the next hour brainstorming about how to proceed, how to hire contract factories, how to play them against one another for the best quality and price, and how were we going to fix these new Nikes. Anyone? We adjourned with a jovial, jittery, elated feeling. Johnson said he wanted to buy me a cup of coffee. Your finest hour, he said. I said, thanks. But I reminded him I just told the truth, as he had in Chicago. Telling the truth, I said. Who knew? And that's the beauty of the story in Phil's leadership. Even through adversity, leading his team with positivity through it. He said he knew that when it came to Blue Ribbon, each of us was willing to do whatever was necessary to win. And if whatever was necessary fell outside our area of expertise, hey, as he and Petro would say, no problem. He didn't know anything about running a factory, but he was willing to try, to learn. Fear of failure, I thought, will never be our downfall as a company. Not that any of us thought we wouldn't fail. In fact, we had every expectation that we would. But when we did fail, we had faith that we'd do it fast, learn from it, and better for it. I'm going to leave with that extract because it's so powerful about how businesses like Nike are built and how failure is the stepping stone towards success and how we should be embracing and learning from it. If you've read Shoe Dog, let me know. And if you have any recommendations also, please let me know. Thanks.